Bonjour, hello, and welcome everyone. Thanks for being here with us this afternoon. My name is Daniel Bélan, and I'm the director of the McGill Institute for the Study of Canada. I would like to begin by acknowledging that while we meet today on a virtual platform, McGill University is located on land which has long served as a site of meeting and gathering amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. We do this to acknowledge the importance of the land on which we work, study, and live, and to acknowledge the complex web of relationships of which we are a part. I want to note before we begin today's lecture that this event is being recorded. Only the talk itself will be posted on our YouTube channel, but we'll have after the talk a Q&A session. It's being recorded, but we won't post the Q&A online later. The Q&A will be moderated, and it's something that you should. So the way it will work is that you will write down your questions in the box that's at the chat box, and so you can ask your questions even as you listen to the talk. If you have a question in mind, you can write it down or wait after the talk, and then I will read the questions out loud. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you today. The McGill Institute for the Study of Canada, or MISC, is the Center for Canadian, Quebec, and Indigenous Studies programs at McGill University. MISC supports a multidisciplinary approach to the study of Canada by bringing together students, researchers, and practitioners to discuss important issues about the country's past, present, and future. In addition to our academic programs, MISC also hosts public events such as this panel today on a wide range of topics that are important to Canadians. It is my pleasure today to welcome all of you to our MISC annual Eakin Lecture. This is actually the Eakin Lecture for the winter semester. We had one in the fall. I would like to take a minute to thank the Eakin family, whose support enriches the study of Canada at McGill and makes possible these lectures. And so the Eakin Fellows are really an integral part of the life at MISC. They teach a class during their fellowship. They also give a public lecture, and this is what we will witness today. The Eakin Visiting Fellowship in Canadian Studies was established by the Eakin family in memory of William R. Eakin. The fellowships are awarded each term to active scholars whose research or teaching advances Canadian studies. MISC is very grateful once again to the Eakin family for the opportunity afforded by these fellowships. Now, I am pleased to introduce the visiting Eakin Fellow at the McGill Institute for the Study of Canada this semester, Dr. Shannon Sampert. Dr. Sampert is a former journalist and a political scientist researching media and gender, a regular columnist for the Winnipeg Free Press. She teaches at the University of Manitoba, McGill University, and Concordia. So I will now turn, of course, that over to Dr. Sampert, and I will be back later on for the Q&A. The Q&A segment. So welcome, Shannon. It's all yours.
Thank you. And yes, I'd like to say thank you as well to the Eakin family for the foundation for the funding of this program and for allowing me to come to MISC. I'd also like to thank Daniel Bélan for putting me in this position and allowing me to come to McGill. And a special thank you as well to Blair Elliott, Petros and to David, who are the sort of the backup players for MISC as well. Blair Elliott, I couldn't survive without you. And Petros and David, Rosemond, I just could not do it without your administrative help. So thank you very much. And I'm so delighted today to be able to see some friendly faces as well from the University of Manitoba and Winnipeg as well. I'm very, very pleased to see some faces from Winnipeg and from the University of Alberta as well. So thank you very much for showing up to my lecture today. I'm going to assume that you can now see my my screen. My talk today is the tall poppy, what happens when women are experts in the media and how we can support them. And this talk really was born out of my own experience as a expert, or as an expert commenting in the media, but also as a columnist for the Winnipeg Free Press, and the type of reactions and responses that I got when I was writing my columns and when I was acting as an expert on social media, but also internally at the university. And I was kind of interested in sort of finding out from the research whether or not my experience was an unusual experience, or whether this is something that other women also experienced as well. So let me just see how this goes now. How does this go next? Oh, there we go. So when I'm looking at who the experts are in my analysis, I'm looking at, in this piece, journalists, politicians, academics, and scientists. And for those of you who don't really understand the term, the tall poppy syndrome is something that comes out of Australia. It's Australian in its origins, and it references anybody who is skilled or adept, or particularly has attributes which makes them more or less stars within the workplace. And those people then are singled out by others who are seemingly jealous of their success, and they are cut off at the top. Their poppy is cut off because of other people's jealousy or whatever. What makes it interesting is that there have been studies that look at this ongoing issue of the tall poppy syndrome. And one of the studies in 2019 said that in Canada, 87% of people surveyed said that their skills had been undermined in the workplace because they were seen or perceived as being too successful. So people felt the need to cut them down and put them in their place. And that same study indicated that both men and women were doing the poppying, or being conducting the tall poppy syndrome, where they cut the person off. So that sort of suggests to us that there's a lot of very jealous people that are operating that don't like it when other people succeed very well. And it also suggests that the workplace is supposed to be, is first of all, full of jealousy, but second of all, it seems that we're supposed to be incompetent, or it prizes incompetence rather than prizes people who are really, really good at their job. Because if you are very good at your job, you face all sorts of undermining or hostile responses from those that are very jealous. So how does this work then in social media? Well, there's all sorts of evidence that the tall poppy syndrome works as well in social media. There's a magazine called Nature, and the Nature did a study of what happened when experts were talking about COVID. And when the experts talked about COVID, they found that 2/3 of their researchers reported that they had negative experiences as a result of their media appearances online and talking about their COVID experiences. 22% of those people said that they had received threats of physical or sexual violence. And that falls in line with what we've seen and heard about our own public health officials here in Canada. Teresa Tam has received a number of sexual and physical threats in her role as the chief public health officer here in Canada. They've been racialized and they've been sexualized as well. And she's received such serious threats that she's had to have an extra security detail put on her home. There are other incidents available as well, including incidents against Bonnie Henry. The Saskatchewan public health official who is a racialized man had people protesting outside of his home as a result of concerns raised about the way that he was talking about COVID. So their anecdotal experiences that we're seeing in Canada from public health authorities also suggest that there are negative experiences being reported by people who are scientists or experts in the field of COVID, or that are also receiving this kind of tall poppy or being poppied as a result. But being tall poppied also occurs in social media for experts and journalists. And this is becoming increasingly prevalent and is also very, very scary. 4 in 10 Americans are reporting online harassment, according to a Pew report that was published prior to COVID. And the sense is that during COVID and after, that number has likely gone up because more and more of us are spending more and more time at home and more time online. The study also reported that women are more likely than men to be harassed on social media sites. Men are likely to be harassed on gaming sites, but women are more likely than men to be harassed on social media sites like Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Women are also more likely to rate the experience of harassment as very or extremely upsetting. In other words, men shake it off because it's not seen as disturbing to them, but women internalize it and find it extremely upsetting. Another survey that was done in the United States suggests that women on Twitter were 2 to 3 times more likely to face negative attacks. The women who are participating on Twitter are generally professional women talking about their research, their academics, or their politicians, or their journalists. So women who are acting in the capacity of their work are finding that they are facing negative attacks when they are working on social media like Twitter. And finally, we know that racialized women are also more likely to be targeted, and they are more likely to be targeted on the issues of their racialization, especially if they are Muslim women. And that's the findings that we're finding out of reports, out of studies that come out of the United States and out of studies that are coming out of the UK. So the attacks are more likely to occur on women, and they're more likely to occur on racialized women as well. Although men, as I say, are attacked, but the attacks are internalized and felt differently for women online. So in order to put this into context, it falls within that sort of gendered mediation literature that many feminists have been working on in terms of how media and how we view or construct women. And one of the things that we construct women as is that leadership, or the experts, have always been gendered as masculine. We don't often think of, or it's outside of our social construction of leadership, to think of women as having leadership abilities. Men are seen as sort of the natural leaders, whereas women are viewed as being much less leadership, more supportive and in supporting roles. So when women rise up and become experts, it's outside of what we normally expect is appropriate, and so we should cut them down. Men are assertive, whereas women are considered pushy when they put their ideas ahead. Women are considered emotional, whereas men are considered rational, despite how they may be responding to something. And there's always the complaint that women aren't collaborative, yet men are always viewed as being in control when they are taking care of a situation. But women, when they do the same thing, are called not collaborative. And with our gendered mediation literature, we know very much that the focus has always been on women's bodies and voices. And so it shouldn't be a stretch to see that the complaints on this tall poppy, when we're being poppied in social media, is about our bodies and our voices, rather than on the policy or the information that we're providing. Again, it's all within that kind of context of a gendered mediation literature that we can extend the tall poppy syndrome and examining the ways that women are harassed online. So let's look at how we have women participating in publics as experts. When we look at Canadian politicians, we know that Canadian politicians have hit the critical mass federally. We're at about 30% or more federally. And with Trudeau's gender balanced cabinet, we have equal representation of women and men as a result of this decision to go with the gender balanced cabinet in 2015. It's so interesting to watch right now. One of the biggest issues consuming politicians' energy is the Ukraine-Russian conflict, and the ministers on this are all women. But still, it's a 70%, 30% split when it comes to men and women as Canadian politicians. Women as experts means that women are also missing as experts. And again, the numbers there are a 70-30 split. Women are missing as experts when it comes to being quoted in newspapers. They're missing on the op-ed pages. They're missing in the letters to the editor page. And there are both institutional and societal reasons for this. In one Canadian study that was conducted by Equal Voice, they looked at 7 Canadian media outlets or programs with high audience readership outputs. And that included the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Post, the National Post, La Presse, CTV National News, CBC The Current, and Ici Tout le Monde. They did 3 monitoring periods in October to December 2015, did 15 days of data and looked at 3,213 people quoted, and they came up with the finding as experts, men outnumbered women. That's 70-30 split, or 71-29% split. So we have more men politicians and more male experts being quoted. And again, with women journalists, it's a 50-50 split, but when it comes down to women covering politics and government, it's a 70-30. Women generally hold about 45% of the senior level professional jobs, according to the International Women's Media Foundation in 2011. According to JSource, about 42% of the national columnists are women, but out of the 90 regional columnists, only 37% are women. But the important key finding, 31% of the reporters covering government are women. So less women covering government, less women in government, and less women as experts. And yet they get copied, and they get copied in a differential way, and it's quite remarkable. Here's an example. Why is Deputy PM Chrystia Freeland spreading COVID crowding into a protest not wearing a mask? Mayor of Toronto has this mask on. What the hell is going on? Oh, and she's holding up a pro-Nazi banner, but that's just a detail. Here's another example. This is from Rebel, the journalistic bastion of alt-right. Chrystia Freeland actually thinks you are dumber than her boss. Watch her put a mask on so she can pretend to take it off when she starts speaking. Again, this is about compliance, not your health. Okay. And then Patriot Girl, Small Fringe, Dr. Common Sense. Keep on sharing this. The Chrystia Freeland is a murderer, wanted for bioweapon acts of terror, millions dead worldwide. I have no idea what that references, but that's okay. Another Chrystia Freeland post about how she is apparently a doer of evil. Here's one from Anita Anand, a beautiful post in light of International Women's Day. She's talking about women from all walks of life serve in our Royal Canadian Air Force. Every day they demonstrate incredible skill and dedication. They put service beyond themselves and are an inspiration to women everywhere. On Women of Aviation Worldwide Week, we salute them. Thank you for your service. A very nice post. Simple. Why would have any problem? Why would anyone have any problem with that? Well, good luck finding rich husbands up there in the sky, ladies. That was one of the responses to that. How demoralizing is something like that? And what is the point of that? Except to put you in your place and tell you what you think. Here's journalists being copied. Bev Rayburn, who has an opinion about something and shares it with everyone who's there to see, sort of like me. Anyway, watching David Cochran host Rosie Barton Live, he's so talented and knowledgeable. He asks the tough questions, but doesn't beat up on the guests. Maybe Vassie, female journalist, could be cut back to 1 hour again, and David could host a new show. In other words, we like David. He's better than Rosie. He's certainly better than Rosie. Vassie, he asks tough questions, but he doesn't beat up on the guests. Women get beat up on the guests, but men don't. All these kind of gendered mediation, and it's right there for anyone to see. Here's an anonymous one. There are still, well, first of all, Maxime Bernier's Why Not Drop the Whole Thing? It's just boring leftist propaganda show. Is Rosie Barton sent to Ottawa to be closer to her idol, Justin Trudeau? And then the response, there are still other CBC on-air types that, in my humble opinion, create negative audience reaction. And the people they are picking on, CBC Katie Simpson and Susan Riley. Too much Liberal Party propaganda, climate change, LGBTQ, gender. Oh, the whole place needs an enema and thorough clean out, Canadian Polly. No men are mentioned, just the women, and an enema and a cleanup as a result. This is one of my favorite tweets. Absolutely made me giggle. And it was Katie Simpson from the CBC hitting back. I loved it. I actually put it on my wall for a while. The more email you send me about hating my lipstick, the bolder it's going to get. Good for you, Katie. Because every so often, it's nice to get a hit off. I love seeing that one. It was one of the best hits I've ever seen. Here's an example of an expert being copied on Twitter. Dr. Tamara K. She provided a really beautiful long thread on sexual harassment, provided a kind of a piece-by-piece overview of how to protect yourself if you were being sexually harassed or abused in the workplace. And it started off with this piece. Remember when the Kavanaugh hearing focused on his calendar? Why was this so important? If you completed your university's online sexual harassment training, you likely would have no clue. That's because we are not trained to properly document sexual harassment and abuse. So let's learn how to today. And then the thread goes on and provides great an overview of don't use your personal computer to document abuse. Don't use an entire journal, but use it separately because your journal and your computer will all be seized and anything else that's on the journal or on the computer will be used against you. So have separate computers that are completely clean. It's wonderful abuse. It was a very, very long thread. This is the response. It was important because it demonstrated that Ford was lying about ever being at a party with a man. Teach women not to lie. I speak for everyone is the anonymous blogger or the anonymous Twitter. So why should we care about these anonymous and very public comments that are being made to female and to men as well, but to female? And I want to make it very clear, men do also receive this type of abuse, but in different ways. And because there are so few women, it just has a differential effect. But why should we care about women? Well, first of all, it does cut down on public discourse in the public square for women. And it provides a type of censorship. It shuts women up. And it also makes women do what we call self-censor. Women, after a while, will start to not speak up. They'll start to say, I don't really want to talk about gun control or abortion or COVID if it's going to lead to me having to deal with my email inbox being inundated by people screaming at me, if I'm going to have to deal with Twitter, if I'm going to have to deal with this kind of response. It also may contribute to the disinformation crisis. If you recall Hillary Clinton being used over and over again as part of the disinformation crisis, including the fact that she was part of a pedophile gang that led to the bombing of a pizzeria in downtown Brooklyn, or was it the Bronx or something like that? It could contribute to this disinformation crisis that is going on. More importantly, it does prevent a full discussion of ideas. When you have people that are so keen of jumping on ideas, and particularly women's ideas, it causes a shutdown. It causes half of a population from wanting to speak up. We have talked over and over again as feminists and as people who are interested in the issue of democracy, of trying to get women to run, more women to run in places like the federal government, provincial government, and municipal government. And it prevents women from running if they see the type of abuse that women like Krista Freeland or women like climate change Barbie. I mean, that's a terrible thing to call our environment minister, Catherine McKinnon, at one point, to call her that. It prevents women from putting their name forward and wanting to actually run for politics. It prevents other women also from wanting to be a leader. Why would I want to expose myself to this type of abuse? And it prevents women from wanting to come forward as being an expert. Journalists and experts also, because they rely on Twitter, may actually not want to expand their careers. Twitter serves, I'm going to sort of talk about Twitter specifically. Twitter serves such an important part for journalists and academics in expanding their careers because it expands their circle of power, their social network of power. And when you can't use that as an important way of networking, it hurts it can potentially hurt your career. And I've heard over and over again, or pardon me, not over and over again, I've heard anecdotally of certain young academics being told that they are not truly seen as worthwhile on the workforce because they're not on Twitter. But for some women, being on Twitter is just too difficult. It's too anxiety promoting. And it also means that women as academics may not want to fully participate in public affairs. Women as academics may not want to actually take the phone call from the media because they do not want to deal with the dick pics that are sent to their email as a result of doing that interview on global television, or they do not want to deal with the terrible and disgusting phone calls that come as a result of something that they said about the city mayor. And that's sort of what has happened to me on a regular basis. The very first time I actually spoke out against the city mayor in Winnipeg, my department secretary asked me to give her a heads up the next time I do that, because she was taking phone calls from people who are so incensed by what I had called, what I discussed in my column. It took the Mirror to task for saying that he felt like Hugh Hefner, surrounded by two women who had just won Olympic gold medals, and he felt like Hugh Hefner being surrounded by these women. And I took him to task for it because it was an insufferable comment. It was a disgusting comment to make about two women who were athletes and leaders in their own right, and he had sexualized them. And of course, you know, it's just not something you do in Winnipeg back in the day. Well, they're getting used to me. They don't do it nearly as much. But the kind of vitriol that I had to deal with as a result was astounding. And that was my first introduction to the kind of public spanking. I guess that's how I would want to put it. Public spanking I got at the time. So what do you think we should be able to do about it? Well, that becomes a really, really big question as well. What should we do about it, and what can be done about it? As academic women, one of the things we can do is use the security function of social media to shut down accounts if you can. If you are speaking about something that is incredibly difficult, like COVID or abortion or gun control, or your mayor being a sexist pig. So shut the account down and ask your friends and families to do the same thing if you think that they may also be potentially targeted. If you're running for political office, I suggest you do the same thing as well, and protect yourself in that manner as well. If you have done something recently, that means that you have been in the public. You may want to wait a couple of days before you check your email, or have someone else check it for you. You may want to not read the comments. And I mean, we've heard this over and over and over again. Don't read the comments, because it will be just a push down the rabbit hole that you do not want to go. It just, sometimes it's just not necessary, and it's not fun or fulfilling. Don't engage. You are under no obligation at all to be polite, and understand that being confrontational will not help. So just don't engage. And if you can, try to depersonalize it as much as possible, particularly if the individual is picking on you in ways that are about your personality, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. If they're talking about your ideas and saying you've missed the research, I mean, that's all very fine and good. That's part of being part of the public square. But if they're telling you, which one of the commenters said when I did an interview with Don Martin, that I had the ugliest glasses in the world, and I looked like I was wearing the toilet seat lids for glasses, try not to personalize it. I gotta tell you, that one really hurt, because I spent a lot of money for these glasses and I think they look pretty cool. But try not to personalize it, and find ways to do self-care. I think sometimes that means vodka. But shouldn't be your problem. And that's one of the things that I really think we need to go after others for. And that is, I think we need to talk to social media companies about doing the right thing. And what that means is social media companies, policing agencies, academic and research organizations have to start taking this more seriously. When women receive unsolicited dick pics in the emails, when women are being told that they should be raped or killed, those kinds of things should be taken seriously. We did not see changes to stalking laws in Canada and the United States until a model named Rebecca Schaefer got killed. I was stalked when I was a television host back in the 1980s, and dinosaurs still ruled the earth. And I was stalked, and I went to the police and said, this guy knows everything about me. He knows where I live. He knows what time I get off work. He knows what kind of car I drive. He knows everything about me. And the police said to me, oh, well, he hasn't threatened to kill you. There's nothing we can do. Luckily, I got another job and I could move out of town. I was 23 years old. I was terrified. And I don't think we should wait until someone actually gets killed as a result of this kind of rape or murder or these kinds of threats before someone actually takes this seriously. And I think one of the things that these companies should do is banning permanently anyone who does this type of behavior. The other thing I think we should start doing is demanding that individuals who do this cannot remain anonymous. Take off the cloak of anonymity. Since when is this okay? I don't think it is, and I think we should start demanding, if you're going to say that I should be raped or I should be murdered, then put your name to it. But that's just my rant. Media, on the other hand, should also stop rewarding those who are inflammatory. Some of the research that's coming out of the United States indicates that because there's so much noise nowadays on social media, on talk radio, on these different types of platforms, that the media are actually interested in capturing those who say things that are inflammatory, and they make those people media stars or expert stars. So that's why Twitter has become increasingly more and more controversial and more inflammatory. So of course they're going to go the extra step. They're going to always sort of push the envelope in order to, get the attention of the media. Well, maybe the media themselves, particularly in the United States, should step back a bit and say, maybe we should look for someone who's going to be a little bit more reasoned, who speaks with a little bit more expertise, and is not sitting there talking about how stupid women are, et cetera, et cetera. Academic and research organizations must become much more proactive. And I know they are moribund organizations at the best of times, but it's time to get into the 21st century, ladies and gentlemen. They have to realize that women may be reluctant to get into public forums in the same way that men are, and not penalize women if they do not do research online in the same way that men do. They cannot penalize them for that. But they also need to be a little bit more proactive about the tall popping that occurs at work. And from that, I mean, if an individual says that they are going to be they're going to be in the media and working with the media and doing media work, they should be supporting that. And they should not be any kind of jealousy in any sort of way as a result of that. But they also should not be penalized if they choose not to do that. And finally, there's a huge importance that we should be placing on our need to be allies. Women and men need to support each other in ways that we are not doing right now. It's because we may be afraid, and that's fine too. We don't want the blowback to come on us. But over and over again, the research has said that we sit there and wait while other people are harassed. And then when we are being harassed, we expect others to step up for us. We have to become allies. When harassment is occurring, we can step in and say, that's enough. I don't like seeing it. Stop it, and stop it in the tracks. Report it and ensure that it stops. And in your organization, do the same thing as well. Ensure that it is reported and make it stop. Because I think that until we and let the organization, the social media organization, know that you will not accept this kind of treatment of women and other and racialized persons as well. I think we need to demand more, and we need to get our public square, which is basically what Twitter and Facebook and all of these other social medias places are. We need to demand that our public square become our public square again, which includes women as well. There's a really great poem, or it's actually not a poem, it was a speech that Teddy Roosevelt made back in the early 1900s. He was making it in France, and it was called The Man in the Arena. But I like it because it's about the woman in the arena as well. Let's make it gender friendly, shall we, for 2022, I guess it is. But it's the idea that it's really easy to criticize the doer of deeds, right? But for those of us who are in the arena, those of us who are the academics, those of us who are the researchers, those of us who are the experts who dare to put our names out there and stand up and talk about the work that we do, we need to be supported. And it's really easy to be the critic on the side, but we should give the credit to the man and the woman in the arena, the doer of the deeds. So I want to say thank you very much for listening to me and going on and on. It's my typical rant. So thank you. And I'm so pleased to take questions from you now.